Mic. Maybe I just passed two mics. Where's another mics?
No. The way you.
Where's another mics? Is there mics there? Sorry. Oh, right there. So we can use two mics. Yeah. Okay. Let's start. So thank you, by the way, for coming to Buffalo and then participating in this symposium. So we have exchanged a lot of emails and communications, and after we met in Buffalo, we also had a chance to walk around the Buffalo and also have a dinner and then drink. So it was very good time to just learn more about you. So this is kind of a beauty of the in-person still these days. I learn a lot from being together. So just for the audience, we will give some time to audience to ask further questions. So that if you have anything you can ask, because I try to make this short. I prepared just 3 questions just to start the conversation, and then I kind of share some idea with the speakers. So first one is about, considering the diverse audience, the first question is about the Hallyu K-wave. So just briefly for the audience, K-wave, Hallyu is the global phenomenon for the Korean popular culture, success of Korean popular culture, especially after 1990. Well, represented by, for example, like Squid Game, like drama, and the movies, Academy Award, like Bong Joon-ho's film, maybe including the Hangang's Nobel Literature Prize. Also, today I just learned that Sony made a goal. Like Brian Carter just sent me the email. So today Sony came back. You don't know? Tottenham Hotspurs? Sorry. Okay. So first question is K-wave. Why architecture is not the major part of it? There was a bit of a question, but you can tell your perspective on where we are on the K-wave too.
Well, as you know, I think it is. Well, as you know, I think it is. In my view, looking at Korea, at least over, let's say, the last 10 or 15 years, there's been a sort of rapid rise in the economic circumstances and a sort of destabilization, if you like, of society to some extent. And Hallyu has grown. But again, as I said in my own talk, it's a repeat of something that goes back at least to the Shilla dynasty. So that's not exactly unique in and of itself. And it's also risen with Bang culture. And seems to be the way I would interpret Bang culture, is that people engage in that and to get together with friends to do very specific things. And this sort of specificity of things is also rendered very evident in the technology that actually went with this wave in the last, say, 20 years. So I think that, and bangs, of course, are prevalent all over Korea in the physical environment, and they're very obvious. I mean, if you walk around Seoul, so I sort of see a convergence of the bang culture, for example, and Hallyu as being a physical manifestation. I mean, I'm old, quite old, and I'm a sort of product of the 60s. And I can remember American culture in the 60s, even though I wasn't in America at the time, which, you had major artistic movements, et cetera, but we also had the suburbs, right? That's a pretty big manifestation of something, but rather indirect. So I'm sort of saying, I think you're looking for something that's maybe too direct. But I think the coterminous aspect of Hallyu with Bang culture in particular, but not only just Bang culture, but the whole idea of seeking out environments for participation in a communal way, that's down to fairly small numbers, which seems to be a manner of activity in Korea that's fairly noticeable to me, is a manifestation of that.
Yeah, there was kind of funny happenings in Korea. The Ministry of Architecture and Construction, they launched the project Lesson is More. They like the word game. Less is more, not less is more. Lesson is more. They told why there is no Korean Furniture Award winner. So you need to learn in abroad. So that is what there is a campaign, there is the project, they give chances to young architects to work abroad. So architecture to us, and not only architecture, everything was to us something we have to learn from the especially West. But I think that is the problem of understandings. Before uh, I know there are many architects influenced by the US and Europe's, because there is no good instructor education system before. But now, I think we are ready to something, and I think, sorry, this way, sorry. I think we have lots of context already. Yeah, so that is I think that is a problem of the time. Uh, the there is no much understanding have occurred to people internationally. For example, the work of Jung Hyun-do, comes me some special feelings, and I got some special feeling of the buildings, or of the building have the from the special feelings I have. Yeah, that is kind of understanding, I think. But as like the feeling I have on the street would be same to you when you meet some work of Koreans, or when you are in Korean circumstance. So I think always context comes first and understanding comes later. So I think this is the another stage of the understandings in Korea.
So you mentioned the
Well, I think that's right.
so yeah, you mentioned education, but education aspect, for example, success in films, dramas, on music. So, for example, their part of education is somehow very different from architects' education. So, for example, Kim Jung-up want to learn from Corbusier, Kim Jong-sung want to learn from Miss Van der Rohe, Kim Soo-gun, all our teachers and our first generation, Kim Soo-gun went to Japan to learn from their culture. So that's very different from, imagine Bong Joon-ho, Han Gang, or their work is about our stories, investigating ours, not, they don't need to think that we need to learn from the West. So
Yeah, but it's a cultural. It's still a cultural phenomenon. What he's talking about, regardless of the way you describe it, because I think you describe it inaccurately. There's a focus on culture, and that's what he was, I think, saying, and that's what he shares with the Times, and the Times also brings with it Hallyu, Bang culture, the Hangzhou things we heard about this afternoon, etc. That's what happens. That's what culture's about. If we take a culturalist view of the world rather than a sort of linear historical one, which is very Western, by the way. I don't know why I'm sounding like a non-Westerner.
yeah,
But,
no.
I think that's the answer, isn't it?
So, okay, so that's great. Thank you. So one thing related to Professor Rowe, your answer. So this is a recent Serpentine Pavilion by Min-Sok Jo. And then one explanation was that this is a madang, Korean traditional kind of voice. So that your book, Korean Modern, Professor Rowe, also describing details on the voice madang as an intermediacy. Anything can happen in between those. That goes back to actually kind of domestic architecture in Joseon Dynasty, kind of how the houses were made.
Yeah, I'm aware of it.
So I'm listening about this madang and void actually for
Probably 50 years.
50 years, more than 50 years. So this year,
So it is actually a cultural trope.
right.
Yeah.
So
it didn't
somehow,
disappear, did it? Because it's up on the wall.
so
So what are we talking about?
I'm asking that, is it still valid way contemporary architects could produce their own language? So when we produce the interpreted, adjusted kind of transformation of the Western modernism in Korea, still should we tell madang to tell our identity?
Why not?
That because it's been half century old arguments.
Yeah, but I mean, if I go to any of the major modern movement people from Italy or from Germany or stuff like that, they also reach back into their own traditions to do things.
Well,
It's not devoid of reaching anywhere.
that's right. So I just put this on the left. This is 17th century Korean house. On the right, 승려상's 1993 수졸당. The name is same.
Yeah.
Both has a beautiful, thoughtful interpretation of madang.
Yeah.
That's 30 years old work.
Yeah.
And this is the Puaha's early in the house. So it's kind of when the Puaha produced the work, in my understanding, they don't need to say anything about Korea, traditional trope, self-referential, anything. They can just tell their own stories to tell different shape of madang or alley or connection. So that's how I feel. It's amazing to see a young architect, emerging architect, produce the new narrative, getting out of the narrative we have been listening for half century.
Yeah, I would have as I told you, there is a kind of stage of understandings. As a development country was the development country. The first, what we have to do is identify ourselves or define ourselves. In the period, the architects, the older ages, the older than us, they try effort to define very many traditions, because the history of Korea is kind of history of denying, refusing, that we denied the colonial area and we collapsed a very nice building built by Japanese, not nice, good appearance, yeah, buildings by Japanese, yeah, well made, yes. They demolished and physically really demolished during the war, Korean War, and to deny the poverty, we changed every house to new way, but very shabby way, yeah. So everything when I was born, there's almost lost. I heard about the Korean traditional house. I haven't lived there, and madang, there's no madang at all. So the kind of the catchy prize that made by many Korean architects before was very far from the reality now. But I think that can be the clue, not only for us. So when people say we have to restore this madang tradition again, when people say we have to Korean wear hanbok again, I don't think that is not good idea. But it can influence to the world. Someone can get a chance, someone can get an idea or inspiration from this. So first, we have kind of trapped before when we were students, everybody, we made the madang once because that is what we had. We learned from the architecture before, but that time was we have no confidence. Yeah. And BTS, Sonungmin, yeah, they give us many pride, and I think maybe I can do something different. Yeah, there is some kind of clue came from there.
So
No, I agree entirely with that. I mean, when I talk about the madang, I'm talking about the way things are, not the way they should be. These are two fundamentally different questions,
Sure.
which
Yeah.
you don't seem to get through your thick skull.
I get, Professor, I get that.
Oh man.
No, still, many architects still make the same argument. That was the kind of comment. Yeah.
It's still, there's still a different question, what the way the world should be. I mean, I'm more on their side than that, on that argument. I mean, but it gives you something to react to. So it is part of the cultural debate.
Sure.
It's not as if we're talking about Tierra del Fuego or something like that, eh?
So Yeondu, maybe you can say something about the identity or the related to this kind of architect thinking about Koreanness.
Well, I think after I came to Buffalo, I've been spoiled to look at this 1895 building made out of terracotta, Sullivan's
Sullivan's Guarantee Building.
great building. To think about it is what was happening in 1895 in Korea? We had a Gojong, the king, and Seoul was influenced by a lot of Chinese and Japanese and the Russians and so on. And when it comes to the needed things that for the life, we talk about 의식주, like clothings and the food, and then the place, the shelter. And for me, I've been making makgeolli, and the makgeolli is just fermented rice, and it's kind of the 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 the, the distinguishing between fermented as rot and fermented as making an alcohol is really thin linear, so it can just easily go to rot. It can produce the alcohol, and we used to have in about the 1985, sorry, 1895, we used to have more than 300,000 breweries of makgeolli. Almost one every two house is making a makgeolli. But in no, 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 no. Because I've been trying to make makgeolli for 7 years, but I couldn't make successful makgeolli. But the reason is that most of the yeast that exists, maybe thousands kind of different yeast, doesn't exist anymore in Korea because it may exist, but they cannot use it for the makgeolli making because of the all prohibited histories of a Japanese period of making the traditional brewery. And now we are using the Japanese yeast, only one kind. And also it is during the military government, the makgeolli is not the priority. It's always the exporting and building a new factories and so on. And now we have time, we get more free and the slowness to think about. And, we think about the visual things that are existing, but like germs or the bacteria is invisible. But the invisible things that we used to have is not, we don't have it anymore. And makgeolli is part of the culture, perhaps. There are a lot of makgeollis in New York, but actually that's the part of Japanese bacteria that we imported and then grow it to sell it to. So some of the things that, like, I don't know much about the architecture, but things that we went through the war and such a rushing, and I see the madang in the apartment, which is everybody hates in Korea. But we also love in apartments because almost 80% of the new buildings that we are building is apartments. And you go to see the countryside, the beautiful landscape, and you still see this apartment block among this beautiful mountain. And we have a built-in kimchi refrigerator in our apartment. And the living room in my Evergreen Tower photo, it is for me, it is madang because it access to the kitchen, it access to the room, and everybody sit there and does things that we used to do in when we have a madang in the villages and so on. And, so I'm sorry.
So in terms of the makgeolli, so that's the related to my third question, like something disappearing in Korea, in my understanding. So, for example, so I will tell just one episode to frame this question. So, I was with my son. I mean, he's just sitting there because my wife is want to see the puhaha. We were in the bus in the Korea, and it was full bus, and they're kind of shaking. And my son was couldn't hold the body, and then suddenly, like, I don't know, it's 56 years old, like beautiful lady, just hold him and put him on the lab without telling anything. Nobody says anything. Boss is quiet, but everyone just kind of smiling, or if I see the eye, they're smiling. So that I was the only one in the bus thinking, like, is this weird or what's happening? But kids is happy. The lady is smiling, saying so cute. Everyone's smiling. So that's a communication without language, without any forms of communication. So that's a kind of a. I'm trying to kind of say one quote by Han Byung-chul, which is a philosopher in Germany. The book name is The Disappearance of Rituals. So, quote, rituals are symbolic acts. They represent and pass on the values and orders on which a community is based. They bring forth a community without communication. Today, however, communication without community prevails. So Korea was a symbol-rich society. Like there's lots of communication without telling, without forms of communication. That makes the community a community, and then it's kind of being together. So in the alley, I'm looking at this house from corner of the building. My mom was always looking for me at 5 p.m. when sun comes down, looking for me to have a dinner. I was hiding in the alleys. So I'm looking at the house. That's kind of my kind of touching some part of my memory in a way that's the story I can make if I live there. So that's the place for ritual in my mind, something disappearing. Why is it disappearing? Because of the modernism, the way of modernization. We architects, many of them learned, educated in the West, come back to US, come back to Korea, produce the work for the clients, but somehow it's not, at least to me, not my stories, not our stories. Somehow it's someone else's stories, in my view. So this, how we understand the modernism, learn from the West, practice here in our village and in our street, directly related to the way how we live together. Makgeolli is disappearing. Makgeolli is not just the drink, like the people coming together, talking, the slowness, people engage in the slowness. Those are disappearing. And then why architects? I mean, maybe it's a question. I think that architecture should support that kind of form of, the way we keep the rituals.
The tacit. Yeah, but you're talking also about tacit values, aren't you? I mean, of course you should. We should. I mean, it seems to me if we go simply beyond functionality, which is the sort of most base definition of, shall we say, orthodox modernism, and go anywhere, it ought to be in that direction. I don't think you've got any argument about that. But also realize that they change with the times. I mean, you're talking about villages that maybe back in the 19th century thought X, Y, and Z, but it doesn't mean that modern communities that are in the 20th century and have been inundated by modernity every which way but loose don't have their own tacit values too. So the value systems change too. Culture changes.
Can I?
You can have a crack at it.
Okay. It is very big problem to me. Yeah, I cannot find any solutions, and there's no way to 설득하다, convince clients for the reason of community or ritual or something, because I think everybody is almost everybody is in crisis in Korea. I mean, just I've been living in Korea only. It seems like everybody living in crisis now. So everything is next step to them. So money first, the safety first, and community comes last. But it is very, really, it is connected to the problems of 우울증, depressions. Yeah, depressions. Yeah, the depression is very big problem, but as the rate of suicide in Korea, depression is very big problem. But when people deal with this, there are many costs happens. Many costs is needed to solve this problem. For example, we have to collapse some buildings and make a park, and we have to do everything. But no one get it is very serious problem. Even So I want to say that is very serious problem, but it is out of sight. Sorry, out of Anjung is Korean, so mixed, out of sight of people. But I think if we have to do something, I think sometimes we are very useless because we sometimes we become a tool of some capitalism, tool of money. But if have some missions as an architect, that is the communities, the revival of community, and I don't know what ritual is in Korea exactly. Ritual, wuxie, okay, yeah, same thing. Yeah, I think that is one goal remain to architects. Mhm. The reason I give mic to him is he is very family person and he loves the communities over here, over around, and he loves the human beings to me. I think so. I thought, okay, just tell anything. 아무거나 말해. 어. So,
I'll try to speak in English, and every day my mother talk fighting today, and I think there is a fighting culture in Korea. Take a picture, fighting, and let's run, fighting, and hi, fighting. And I think fighting means life is war. War means always our life is competition. Mm, almost people is studying from 태어날 때? Since born in Korea to 90 and
yes.
yeah, 90 and catch a job to from 2020. So architecture and what I had to do architecture for people. Many architects make a public space. Though isn't there? 아, 필요한가? 진짜 필요한가? 니드인데 진짜 필요한가? Really needs public space for a person? I don't know. 에, 이제 한국말로 할게요.
Yeah, he's not going to talk in Korean.
개인이 있어야 공동체가 있다고 생각해요.
Uh, yeah, individual comes first, and then community last.
그래서 현재 나는 개인 공간에 집중하고 있어요.
So for now, I'm concentrating on individuals' space.
혹시 개인 공간이 행복해지면 전체를 바라볼 여유가 생길지도 몰라요.
If individual space becomes a space that makes somebody happy, I think it opens up for opportunities that it could somehow develop into a community.
그래서 그리고 짓고 확인하는 중이에요.
So I draw a construct, make them something very tangible, and I evaluate them again.
Right. That's a beautiful kind of answer to all three questions. So I'll give the microphone to audience if you have questions. So I will pass the mic. Leave this just in case. I will just Mhm.
For the comment last time, and my father like grew up with like families like brother of three, so they couldn't have their own rooms while they're growing in like younger age. And after he like became successful, purchased an apartment, I have a little brother. We have like separate room provided from them. So they were arguing that you have like your decent own individual room and why you are not satisfying your life. We furnish your like bed, desks, and book shelves and wardrobe when what you're not satisfying your settings. It's like fancy thing that I haven't experienced, but probably may not have know how individuals should live in their own spaces. So they probably thought that physical built environment settings would be giving us happiness. So I felt in like that way. So I don't know how to manage my space by myself at all. Like school doesn't teach us all, and my parents haven't experienced of living such fancy space at all from for whole their lives. So I think from my generation, we are starting to getting into to such precious spatial spatiality, I guess. You know, yeah.
Gotten rich.
Anyone respond?
Well, yeah, he just got rich.
I just have another question. You mentioned about the Ministry of Architecture in Korea. Can you talk about that more? I've never heard of a government having a Ministry of Architecture.
No, there is actually no Ministry for Architecture in Korea. There is part of Ministry of Culture, and there is a part of Ministry of Construction and Transportation. Good, yeah. Yeah, that is the first phenomenon I want to say. Yeah, yeah, there is no and when there is kind of articles where, because we love to compare to Japanese. Japanese got lots of physical prize, and there is Bong Joon-ho and there, Son Heung-min. There is many of stars in Korea, but why there is no Korean architect, star architect? That was the article, and that was the response about the article. The Ministry of Construction and Transportation launched campaign, and they support the young architect who picked by their portfolio, and they give experience to work abroad. So when they come back, they will get Pritzker Prize. Yeah.
But the ministerial arrangements in many countries change from time to time. So
They change rather modestly. In architecture, rarely features on the headline.
well, I'm not sure you're right about that. I mean, I remember after the Juronji, one of the sort of relatively recent times in China where they changed 20 of the ministries around, and then they about 10 years later they did the same thing back again. So it happens quite frequently in some places.
I guess this is more of just a reflective comment than a question, but and perhaps this question of trying to define Korean architecture is almost an impossible one in some ways, you know, and almost for any culture. But of the three who are up here, one of the things I just kind of noticed was that, like Peter, when you were talking, for instance, about like sort of you know, when you were defining kind of certain characteristics of that were happening or that you observed within Korean modernity with the street culture and the way that sort of the signage has sort of been able to take over. And then Yundu, when you were talking about and showing the photographs of each of the ways that families kind of change the habitation of the modern, you know, those sort of modernist spaces, making them their own. And Fuhaha, when you were speaking about Even, you know, with that apartment building, how, you know, they started to put up the posters, right? And they started to appropriate the architecture and take over that, you know, that ancillary sort of space, the public space that you were talking about. I almost think that sometimes the architecture that's kind of emerging is one of sort of maybe a soft or surface or kind of a architecture in a subtle kind of resistance. And perhaps that might be, I don't know if you have thoughts or comments about that, but that just was my interpretation.
Yeah, I mean, you can. I mean, that's an interesting way of putting it in a sense. In other words, you're sort of describing an idea that we have a physical environment with architectures of different shapes, sizes, etc., and culture, so to speak, sort of waves over that, and it changes and it attenuates, and some of it goes, some of it stays, and so forth. Yeah, I think that's the way history works, isn't it? You ought to write a book.
Sorry, I just don't remember who was rating. Yeah, right. Yeah, raising the hand.
So thank you for the amazing presentation. So I actually have a question for Fuhaha friends, and I was wondering, like, what's your story of how you guys became a team together? Like, did you guys go to schools together and stuff like that? And like, even though you guys said you work individually, how do you think you guys still made your company successful all together?
Yeah, I don't think I understand 100%. Actually, I'm not very good, but yeah, yeah. We just kind of some 사고뭉치, bully, or in company tour. We were kind of bad guys in company when we were worked in very big architecture firm before. So, very very distinguishable people they were. So we gather together and we make some happenings. And once I used to be very famous person, very polite, but in the other end, I make many troubles. No one knows. So one day, I crushed the pot, the expensive 도자기 ceramic, yeah, of the bus. So I was making it to one with a bond, yeah. And he's the only person that that yeah, that's sorry, my English I used all my English. Yeah. He's the only witness. Yeah. So he recognized who I am, and he looked so different from any other people. Yeah. Now he is very looks normal, but not. He was like homeless before, and he loves to yell people to the boss. No, you don't have to do that. And to the team leader, I will go my way. Just like so. So we talked together. We have to do something together because we had everybody. But we loved our company and our work. But there are someone we don't like. That we love very defensive. We don't like very defensive people, and we don't like people who don't try effort as they can do. The kind of taste we have. I'm not sure the taste word is right or not. Anyway, we have the kind of thinking. So that is why we became together. And why we don't work together is the kind of conversation and negotiation make everything flat. That is my idea. So we promised together, let's everybody to push everything till the end and just give a chance to fail, and just let them go if they are serious, if they try effort very hard. So when we say some is so lazy about things, we try to show someone that I work very hard. This kind of fighting system works in Korea, in here, in our company.
So that company, for example, like HOK or KPF kind of firm, the corporate firm in Korea, so that they were met that company that talking about. Yeah. Sure. Who next? Sorry.
Thank you. This question is for Pahaha. You mentioned that having a fun personality, but also being serious with your work. How do you balance when to have fun and when to be serious? Or how do you balance your social life versus your work life?
It's difficult questions to us because we never think about that. But I think when we play with each other, we make a catch prize. We made a catch prize like we play like work, right? We play like working, or yes, yes, or the opposite is say. So when we work, we play like we like play. We play anyway. So the yeah, I think this is the only way to make the balance. Is this answer to you? Yeah.
To represent them, we think playing is working really. Some people go mountain, that is working. Yeah. Some people play game, that is working. Yeah. There are pro gamers. Yeah. Everything is working. So the point is what we want to do or not. Only the point remains. So we do only what we want to do. That is best facility. 복지? 복지? Compensation. We can give to our staffs, team members. You don't have to do what you don't want to do. For example, there are many projects by the rich people. Yeah, it's just big building, big money. You famous. Yeah, but they would very curious about us because we refuse it everything. Yeah, we always do what we want to do. Yeah, that's why the clients come to interesting clienting comes to us.
We have more time, so just one comment before I give back to you. So that this background photographs is the Yeondu Jung's work. So those are dancing of the kind of in Borame 공원. So that one thing I see common in Poa Friends and Yeondu Jung is that the kind of a sense of humor, and then we think of beauty differently. So that in the Professor Rowe and I also was walking around AKG, and then we were talking about the kind of East and West, and then kind of sculpture of the nude, the body in the going back to the Greek kind of a classical time, so that in a way that we in the Eastern thought does not put the determined form as a beauty, so that there's no kind of a painting of the naked body or sculpture, because so that's kind of resonate to me, that the Poha kind of think of very unique way of understanding the kind of spaces and relationship to people, and then Yeondu think of this is beautiful, even though the word may say that this is not kind of the beauty, not even close, but there is a happiness and joy in there, and then we think that that's the kind of Korean. I mean, it's kind of unique Korean kind of fighting culture, like what Paul mentioned, like a very tense. We are born to compete with someone, very used to compete, but that makes the sideways, like beautiful explosion of kind of like a enjoyment and amusement. Like Professor Rowe, you mentioned the hwarang, like the going back to Shilla, there's a pungnu, which is the singing, fighting together, and then kind of playing and fighting together. So those two are very different and opposite, but kind of comes together in weird moment. So Professor Rowe mentioned a couple times the bang culture, karaoke. So actually, really know that I completely agree with you. In bang culture, there is a fight and enjoyment together. Like it's kind of the certain moment in karaoke, like we really kind of the culture of singing and like enjoyment is kind of fighting very competitive way in some way. So it's kind of I just want to mention looking at the background, and then it was a very interesting kind of a resonance between this conversation. Okay, so questions? Yeah.
And the English invented soccer.
Mhm.
For my question, I was curious about in say the Japanese authors in Praise of Shadows, Tanzanaki talks about the embrace of harmony and how it contrasts modern and traditional like ways of life. So for in one of his examples, he talks about with shoji and the idea of that it's not like feasible today just because like paper and combating elements, but the idea of when you try to blend it by doing like a dual pane system of glass and shoji, it's not effective because it's this unharmonious blend that he deems like inappropriate and not like expressive and kind of like a mix match of parts. So where do you see like in Korean culture, especially moving towards more modern and defined idea, that like blending of like harmony of the past and the future?
Copy Yang doesn't work.
Can you rephrase your questions into a little bit more simple?
With modern day Korean architecture, what would you say is that middle ground between traditional and modern?
I think when I see Yeondu, I think I catch it. I catched it through his work, one of his work, the Sanglok apartment. Yeah, when we were young, apartment was something very stupid one. Some architects used to say apartment is same of failed culture in Western, but Korean loves it. So we have to feel immersed about it ourselves. But as we grow up, people began to look into apartment culture another way. Before, apartment was the concrete mess that without nothing. But these days, they look into another side, apartment. Uh, in case of the recent episode, uh, there were many corruptions for new buildings in Korea. Uh, people people collapsed very big cluster of apartment before, and there was very big trees also. No one had it looked like no one have any questions about the development before. Before that, there was no problem at all. But many people resist about it, and many people insist to we have to preserve the apartment and trees also. But really, the power is very small compared to Europe or any other countries. It is almost no power. But I I think the clue is the different way of singing in apartment. So very the kind of modern classic way in Korea, there is some kind of some absolute value. The apartment is bad, madang is good. There is kind of the sorting system, but I think we have some senses to resort it very different way. So as Yang told, as a human, I feel very bad about his idea because I think community is very important. That is what we have to do. But he says, I'm first, my family is first, but both are right. So in these complexities and the ironies, we will have very personal interpretations or personal answers. So being different from any others, I think that is the first step, and that is mid architecture of Korea now. So, um, I think we are doing that now.
I am very proud of BTS because they are so popular all over the world, but I don't understand their words. Lyrics are almost English, few Korean words, and they're too fast. Me, as an Elvis Presley lover, their music's too fast for me. So, then when we talk about the tradition and the uh, Western, it's difficult, as you said, it's quite converted. As a Korean, and my father loves Elvis Presley. That's why I love Presley since I was middle school. And the American pop culture after the war, my father experienced the war, is kind of a natural. And I don't know whether that's I can tell it as a traditional or Western influences, but I learned it from my father. So it's then when we talk about something that we ought to have like traditional influence, because whenever I go to overseas, I had to choose two attitude. One is suddenly I find myself very proud of Korea. So being as a representative, try to say good things about Korea. Although in Korea, I've been always complaining about the life, this city look ugly, and so it's kind of uh, when the first generation went overseas and they studied and come back, that's the for me I can guess the moment that they start became truly try to understand and represent what's the Koreanness in the other country rather than what they have learned and then come back to shows the different style. That's what my guess.
I actually think you shouldn't hold them in opposition, these two sorts of, shall we say, definitions of the world, a traditional one or a modern one. They will probably continue to coexist. And it's a way of, I think the way you try to navigate that is to make sure that what you're doing in a quote modern way doesn't imperil that which is in a traditional way and vice versa. And that's why we have big arguments with the UN, for example, with the UNESCO programs and things like that, which seem to be overruling modern versus by way of tradition, for example, which is a big burning debate in at least my world. So I think, if you don't do damage from one side or the other, that's probably the way to navigate. But they're both going to exist and you'll have to live with it.
Any questions for the questions? No.
Hi, thank you all for being here. It's been a real fascinating with all these talks and the discussions, and kind of going back to the defining what is Korean architecture and maybe what is Korean culture now, and kind of defining that's a very tricky question. I think that we've been kind of dancing around that. And I'm a musician, not an architect, so I know very little about architecture, but I do find that there's a lot of similarities, and that's a kind of a discussion I've had with many people. Architecture and music, it's a lot of common themes, I think, and concepts. And for Korean, oh, and I should also preface, I'm Korean American. I'm a first generation, or what Koreans say is 1.5, 1.5세. I came here as a child. So as a musician, I often struggle and think about, what is being Korean and what is being American, because I am an American. I vowed and did my oath to the Constitution, and got my citizenship. And what does it mean to be Korean American? And those are very tricky questions as a musician, and what music I make and all that stuff, right? And I think it's particularly tricky for us now, because I think there needs to be like a retrospective, to define something. And the self-awareness of now is the I think maybe the barrier that exists define what is Koreanness or what is Americanness. You kind of need a retrospective. And as an example, in music, J.S. Bach, in classical music, is a kind of a towering figure. And in the late 19th century and early 20th century, he kind of really became an identity of German music and German culture. But if you look at the history, when he was alive, he was not very actually well known. And most of his influences were Italian and French, actually, as a musician. And so not very German. He had distinct German things, like he was Lutheran, and some German cultural. He was living in Germany at the time. And but in the 19th century and the 20th century, the German identity, nationalism and movement, he was really, touted as being like the model German. And so there's a retrospective of defining what that is, right? And kind of a lineage of Bach and Beethoven and Brahms is kind of constructed, right? So I'm thinking maybe now for Korean culture is because there's been such rapid growth economically, and Korean culture is now spreading, and a lot of Koreans in all fields, like in soccer, or pop music, or sports, whatever, have really thrived. I think partially due to the economic success. You need the academic background for that success to exist, right? And so I'm not sure if I have a question, but essentially I think maybe so the works of Mr. Jung and works of Puhaha, maybe in 50 years or in a century, like we'll look back and maybe that's like kind of the defining Koreanness, but it's hard to define that now at the moment, right? I'm not sure if there's if you want to comment on that, or that's just had some thoughts.
Yeah, I really thought about the one and a half age or second age of a migrant. When we compare to the things have been defined by all the architects, we feel like it sometimes. So, but I don't think it may be very different from you, or the other people's. I'm very maybe you hopeful about it. I love this undefined condition, and I don't want to define something, but I know I cannot because things are not finished yet. So we're just give a kind of clue or give a key to the culture. And yeah, that taking a risk is very important to us. And I think what we have to do is be serious or be honest when we talk something, when you make something. So we don't want to decorate ourselves, and we don't take about the way of sin from others. I think that kind of stance is very important to could make some very diligent or diligent and result. Yeah.
So thank you so much for the question, Professor Shin. So one thing I just want to add is that that's true that this tricky identity issue is always kind of something we need to deal with looking back. However, we have to make decisions on, let's say, we have to preserve this building or not, or we have to demolish this building or not, or the discussion has a attention like based on certain factors, so that a lot of people talk about like madam, like how long, and then if that discussion is not contributing to the way we being creative, then more productive, healthy discussion should talk about it, and then kind of another aspect, another opinion should emerge, so that I just hope that that kind of kind of discussion on where we are, especially at this point, especially after the kind of Cape culture success. So that there was the kind of idea, Vice Provost Nojin Kwak and then Dean Julia Cerniak and many faculty members kind of prepare this symposium, and especially inviting like artists, Boha friends, and then urbanist researcher, historian, and from all different fields, So that this is kind of to me, like a fascinating couple of days just to exchange ideas. I mean, there are actually so many we didn't discuss. For example, the Gwanghwamun, Professor Ro's lecture showed the history of Gwanghwamun as a kind of key event in our history of modernization. Yeondu also shows the beautiful work kind of about that street. And as the Poha didn't mention it, but I know that the Gwangjang Jian project about a lot of discussion on what is the street to us, what is the Gwangjang to us. In Korea, in the Singapore street, what is the right way to revitalize it? That decision needs a discussion. So Professor Shin, you are absolutely right. That's delayed discussion, but also something I feel urgent to kind of to look us and kind of checking where we are. So I think this is a fantastic way to end the symposium. And participant, thank you so much for coming to this symposium. I know that in a way that this used to be kind of very Asian studies topic, but I aim to bring it to multidisciplinary. So the students, especially coming to here, having interest in this topic, I thank you so much for that. So great. Bruce is not here. So yeah, so I can end this, but in a way that Professor Rowe and Professor thank you for coming. We have to go to airport.